The emergency session of Earth's unified government lasted 6 hours. Representatives from every human colony across 3 star systems joined the meeting through secure communications. President Haywan stood before them, her image broadcast to billions of humans watching from their homes. 50 years ago, when our world was dying, the Karathi Empire saved us. They gave us technology, resources, and hope when no one else would help. Today they face extinction from the Vexari Dominion. The Galactic Council has abandoned them. Every other species has found excuses to look away. But we will not. Humanity will honor its debt. She paused, looking at the faces of the government representatives. Some looked worried. Others looked determined. All of them understood the weight of this decision. Humanity's military was small. The Vexari were powerful. This could end badly. I am not asking you to vote for war. I am asking you to vote for honor. The Karathi stood by us when we had nothing. Now we must stand by them. Yes, we might lose. Yes, many of our people might die. But if we do nothing, if we abandon them like everyone else, then what does that say about who we are? The vote was called. One by one, representatives from Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and the outer colonies cast their votes. The result was unanimous. Every single human government voted to support the Karathi. Not a single voice of opposition. Within hours, the mobilization began. Admiral Jiwoo received the orders at his command post on the moon. He was a veteran officer who had spent 30 years building Earth's defense fleet from almost nothing. He was a short man with gray hair, cut military short, and eyes that missed nothing. When he read the mobilization order, he allowed himself a small smile. Finally, he thought, finally, we get to show what we can do. Jiwoo called his senior staff together. Maps of Karathi space filled the display screens. Intelligence reports showed Vexari force deployments, supply routes, and attack patterns. The situation looked grim. The Vexari had already captured 12 Karathi systems and were pushing deeper into their territory. We cannot match their numbers, Jiwoo said to his officers. We have 38 combat-ready ships. They have thousands. If we fight them directly, we will lose. So we will not fight them directly. We will fight smart. Captain Myungdae stood at attention among the other officers. He was 45 years old with scars on his hands from the solar flare crisis. He had been a power plant engineer back then, working desperately to restore electricity while his wife and daughter waited at home. He had failed to save them. They had died in the chaos. That memory drove him every single day. Sir, I volunteer to lead the first strike force, Myungdae said. His voice was steady, but everyone in the room knew his story. Everyone understood why he needed to do this. Jiwoo studied him for a moment, then nodded. You will command the Perseverance. Take 9 ships with you. Your mission is to hit their supply lines and make them think we are everywhere at once. Can you do that? Yes, sir. We will make them regret invading the Karathi. While the fleet prepared for deployment, Intelligence Officer Yoonji worked around the clock analyzing Vexari military doctrine. She was 28 years old, brilliant and obsessed with details. Her office was covered with data screens showing intercepted communications, battle reports, and tactical analyses. She discovered something interesting. The Vexari relied completely on overwhelming force. Their standard tactic was to mass their fleets and crush resistance through sheer numbers. They expected enemies to either surrender immediately or engage in direct combat. They had used this strategy successfully for 200 years. But that strategy had a weakness. The Vexari had never fought an enemy that refused to play by their rules. They had never faced an opponent who attacked their supply lines, their communications, their support systems. They were like a giant with powerful fists, but no armor protecting their body. Yoonji brought her findings to Admiral Jiwoo. She spread her analysis across his desk, showing him exactly where the Vexari were vulnerable. He read through everything carefully, asking questions and making notes. When he finished, he looked at her with approval. This is excellent work. This is how we win. We do not fight their strengths. We attack their weaknesses. They think we are too small to matter. We will use that against them. Across Earth and its colonies, millions of humans prepared for war. Factories that had been producing civilian goods switched to military production. Engineers designed new weapon systems. Pilots trained in combat simulations. Medical teams prepared trauma centers. Everyone contributed something. The preparation was remarkable because humanity had spent 50 years getting ready for this moment. After the solar flare crisis, humans had vowed never to be helpless again. They had built their military quietly, without advertising their capabilities. They had studied warfare, practiced tactics, and developed technologies. Other species thought humans were weak. That was exactly what humans wanted them to think. On the day of departure, Captain Myung-dae stood on the bridge of the Perseverance. His crew was young but well-trained. They knew the risks. Some of them might not come home, but every single person on that ship had volunteered. They all understood what the Karathi had done for humanity. They all wanted to repay that debt. The fleet launched from Earth orbit in formation. 10 ships in the first wave led by the Perseverance. 20 more would follow once they established forward positions. It was not a large force, but it was what humanity could spare without leaving Earth defenseless. As the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, Myung-dae looked at the stars flowing past his viewport. He thought about his wife and daughter. He thought about the Karathi who had given humanity a second chance. He thought about Supreme Commander Rethok and the Vexari, who thought humans were not worth worrying about. "They are about to learn differently," he said quietly. Back at the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Taeyang received a private message from diplomat Kelrath. The Karathi was concerned. He appreciated humanity's support, but he did not want humans to sacrifice themselves for a lost cause. The message was simple. "Ambassador Taeyang, please reconsider. Your fleet is too small. The Vexari will destroy them. Do not throw away human lives for us. We are already lost. Save your people." Taeyang sat in his quarters and wrote his response carefully. When he finished, he sent it to Kelrath. The message was even simpler. "Humanity never forgets a debt. We are coming. Hold on." In the Vexari command structure, reports about human fleet movements were filed and mostly ignored. Supreme Commander Rethok glanced at the intelligence briefly. 10 human ships heading toward Karathi space. He assigned them a threat level of 0. His officers did not even bother to redirect any forces to intercept them. The humans would arrive, realize they were outmatched, and flee. It was not worth paying attention to. But in the Karathi capital city, news of the human fleet spread quickly. People who had lost hope began to feel something new. It was not confidence. The humans were too small to win. But it was something else. It was the knowledge that someone cared. Someone remembered what the Karathi had done. Someone was willing to fight alongside them even when the cause seemed lost. In homes across Karathi worlds, families gathered around their communication devices. They watched news reports showing the human fleet approaching their territory. Children asked their parents who the humans were. The parents explained, 50 years ago we saved them. Now they are coming to save us." The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Karathi space. Captain Myung-dae studied the tactical displays. Vexari forces were everywhere. They controlled 12 systems and were pushing into 3 more. The odds were overwhelming. He opened a communication channel to his fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Myung-dae. Our mission is clear. We cannot win by fighting their way. So we fight our way, hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before they can respond. Make them chase shadows. Make them afraid. Show them that humanity stands with the Karathi." The responses came back immediately. All ships confirmed. They were ready. The war was about to begin, and the Vexari were about to learn that size was not everything. Sometimes determination mattered more than power. Sometimes strategy beat strength, and sometimes the smallest force could change everything. The Vexari occupation fleet controlled Althos Prime with absolute authority. It was a critical supply hub for their invasion, with warehouses full of ammunition, fuel, and food. Commander Thexnor sat in his command chair aboard the battleship Dominator, reviewing reports of another successful day. 3 more Karathi colonies had surrendered without fighting. The war was going exactly as planned. Then a junior officer approached nervously. "Sir, we have detected a small fleet approaching the system. Sensors identify them as human vessels. 10 ships total." Thexnor barely looked up from his reports. "Humans? The same species that Supreme Commander Rethok said we should ignore?" "Yes, sir. They are entering the outer system now." "How many ships do we have in this system?" 200 combat vessels, sir. Plus support ships," Thexnor laughed. 10 ships against 200. "This will not even qualify as a battle. It will be target practice. Send 50 ships to intercept them. Destroy them quickly so we can return to important matters." But the human fleet did not head toward the Vexari battle group. Instead, Captain Myung-dae split his 10 ships into 3 groups. Each group targeted different objectives scattered across the system. They moved fast using the asteroid fields and gas clouds for cover. The first group, led by Lieutenant Bora, attacked a communication relay station on the edge of the system. The Vexari had 3 defense satellites protecting it. Bora's ships fired precise shots that disabled the satellites within seconds. Then they destroyed the relay station itself, cutting off communications for the entire sector. The attack lasted 4 minutes. By the time Vexari reinforcements arrived, the human ships were gone. The second group targeted a fuel depot orbiting Althos Prime's third moon. The depot supplied fuel for hundreds of Vexari ships. Lieutenant Quan Ho led this attack personally. His ships fired missiles from long range, then immediately changed course. The missiles hit the depot's storage tanks, causing a massive chain reaction. Explosions lit up space as millions of liters of fuel ignited. The depot was completely destroyed. The human ships had already jumped away before the first Vexari patrol could respond. The third group, which Captain Myungdai led himself, went after something more dangerous. A Vexari ammunition convoy was moving through the system under light guard. The Vexari considered the convoy safe because they controlled the entire system. That assumption was their mistake. Myungdae's ships appeared from behind an asteroid, attacked with everything they had, and destroyed 6 cargo ships in less than 3 minutes. The escort ships tried to fight back, but the humans were too fast. They had studied Vexari tactics. They knew exactly how long it would take for reinforcements to arrive. They were gone before the main fleet could respond. Back on the Dominator, Commander Thexnor stared at the damage reports in disbelief. In less than 15 minutes, the humans had destroyed a communication relay, a fuel depot, and an ammunition convoy. His fleet of 200 ships had not managed to engage a single enemy vessel. How did this happen? Thexnor shouted at his officers. How did 10 tiny ships cause this much damage? Nobody had a good answer. The humans had not fought like any enemy the Vexari had faced before. They did not mass their forces for a direct assault. They did not try to hold territory. They just hit valuable targets and disappeared. Over the next 3 days, the attacks continued. The human fleet was everywhere and nowhere. They destroyed supply convoys, disabled orbital stations, and attacked isolated Vexari patrols. Each attack lasted only minutes. Each time, they escaped before the main Vexari fleet could respond. On the 4th day, pilot Sang-mi led the most daring raid yet. She commanded a squadron of 4 small attack craft that were designed for speed rather than heavy combat. Intelligence officer Yoonji had discovered that the Vexari stored most of their ammunition for the entire sector in a single massive weapons depot on Althos Prime's largest moon. Sang-mi was 26 years old, the daughter of farmers who had died during the solar flare crisis. She had joined the military the day she turned 18 and had become one of humanity's best pilots. She was fearless but not reckless. She calculated risks and took only the ones that mattered. The weapons depot was heavily defended. 20 combat ships patrolled the area constantly. Defense platforms covered every approach. It seemed impossible to attack. But Sang-mi had a plan. Her squadron approached the moon using a trajectory that looked like debris from a recent battle. They powered down their engines and drifted, letting momentum carry them forward. To Vexari sensors, they looked like wreckage. The defense systems ignored them. When they were close enough, Sang-mi gave the signal. All 4 ships activated their engines simultaneously and fired their weapons at the depot's main storage facility. The missiles hit exactly where they needed to. Secondary explosions began immediately as stored ammunition cooked off. The depot exploded in a fireball visible from orbit. Millions of rounds of ammunition, thousands of missiles, and countless other weapons were destroyed in seconds. The explosion was so massive that it damaged 3 nearby Vexari ships that were supposed to be protecting the depot. Sang-mi's squadron escaped through the chaos. By the time the Vexari organized a response, the human ships were long gone. The attack had crippled Vexari offensive capabilities for the entire sector. Without ammunition, their ships could not fight. Without fuel, they could not move. Without communications, they could not coordinate. Commander Thexnor realized he had a serious problem. He could not defend everything at once, and the humans refused to engage his main fleet. He needed to concentrate his forces, but that would leave important targets undefended. He needed to spread out his forces, but that would make them vulnerable to human attacks. He made a decision. He split his 200 ships into 20 groups of 10 ships each. Each group would patrol a specific area and protect key installations. This way, he could defend everything while still having enough force to fight the humans when they appeared. It was exactly what Admiral Jiwoo had predicted the Vexari would do. He had been monitoring the situation from his command post, watching as the enemy commander made mistake after mistake. When intelligence reported that the Vexari had divided their fleet, Jiwoo smiled. He is playing right into our hands. Send the signal to Captain Myungdae. It is time for the main strike. Captain Myungdae received his orders and gathered his entire fleet together for the first time since arriving in Karathi space. All 10 ships formed up in attack formation. Their target was Commander Thexanor's flagship, the Dominator. The Vexari had assumed the humans would continue hit-and-run attacks on weak targets. They did not expect the entire human fleet to suddenly attack their most powerful ship. The Dominator was surrounded by only 9 escort vessels. Thexanor had sent the rest of his fleet to defend other locations. The human fleet appeared suddenly from behind a gas giant. They were already at full speed, weapons armed and ready. The Dominator's sensors detected them immediately, but there was no time to call for reinforcements. The battle would be over before help could arrive. Myungdae's ships attacked with coordinated precision. Half the fleet targeted the escort ships while the other half focused on the Dominator. The Vexari fought back hard. Their ships were powerful and their crew was experienced. But the humans had trained for this exact scenario. Every pilot knew their role. Every gunner knew their target. The battle was brutal. 2 human ships took heavy damage. 1 escort ship was destroyed. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. But the humans maintained their formation and kept up their attack. They had come too far to fail now. After 8 minutes of intense combat, the Dominator's shields finally collapsed. Human missiles struck the command section. Secondary explosions rippled across the hull. Commander Thexanor tried to order an evacuation, but the communication systems were destroyed. The ship was dying. The Dominator broke apart in a final explosion. The remaining escort ships stopped fighting and retreated immediately. Without their commander, without coordination, they had no chance of winning. Captain Myungdae surveyed the battlefield. His fleet had taken damage, but every ship was still operational. They had done it. They had destroyed the enemy flagship and driven the Vexari from Althos Prime. Throughout the Karathi systems, people watched the news in amazement. The humans had actually done it. 10 small ships had defeated 200 Vexari vessels. It seemed impossible, but it had happened. Back at the Galactic Council, representatives who had laughed at humanity's promise now watched the reports in silence. Maybe they had underestimated the humans. Maybe size was not everything after all. The first battle was won, but the war was far from over. The news of Commander Thexanor's defeat reached the Vexari High Command within hours. The military council gathered in their war room, a massive chamber on their capital world. Holographic displays showed the devastating losses at Althos Prime. 200 ships scattered or destroyed by just 10 human vessels. It was humiliating. Grand Marshal Vokrath stood before the council. He was the most decorated military commander in Vexari history. He had conquered 47 star systems over his long career. He had crushed rebellions, defeated empires, and never lost a major campaign. The other council members looked to him for answers. The humans have embarrassed us. This cannot stand. I will personally lead an armada to the Karathi homeworld. We will crush both the Karathi and their human protectors in one decisive battle. No more games. No more half measures. We will show the galaxy what happens when someone challenges the Vexari dominion. Within days, Vokrath assembled the largest Vexari fleet ever gathered in one place. 5,000 combat ships supported by countless supply vessels, repair ships, and troop transports. It was overwhelming force designed to end the war immediately. The fleet was so large that it took 3 hours just to complete the jump to faster-than-light travel. Back on Earth, Intelligence Officer Yoonji tracked the massive fleet movement with growing concern. She brought her findings to Admiral Jiwoo immediately. Sir, the Vexari are moving their entire military to the Karathi homeworld. We estimate 5,000 ships. Our fleet of 38 vessels cannot possibly stop them in direct combat. Jiwoo studied the tactical displays without expression. He had expected this. The Vexari were predictable. They relied on overwhelming force because it had always worked before. But that approach had a critical weakness, one that Yoonji had identified weeks ago. Show me their supply chain. Every fuel depot, Every repair station, every logistics hub that supports this armada. Yunji pulled up the data. The Vexari supply network stretched across 3 sectors. Dozens of installations provided fuel, ammunition, food, and spare parts for their massive fleet. The network was huge but also predictable. The Vexari used the same supply routes they had used for decades. Jiwoo smiled. There is our target. We cannot defeat 5,000 ships, but we can leave them stranded. Contact Captain Myungdae. I have new orders for him. The Vexari armada arrived at the Karathi homeworld with Grand Marshal Vokrath expecting an easy victory. The Karathi fleet was in orbit, trying desperately to defend their home. They had maybe 500 ships and most were damaged from earlier battles. The human fleet was there too. All 38 ships formed up alongside their Karathi allies. Vokrath looked at the defenders with contempt. 500 Karathi ships and 38 human ships against my 5,000. This is not a battle. This is an execution. All ships prepare to attack. We will end this war today. But Admiral Jiwoo was not planning to fight that battle. While the Vexari armada gathered for their attack, human strike teams were already moving. 20 special operations ships had been deployed throughout Vexari territory over the past 2 weeks. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, powered down and invisible to sensors waiting for this exact moment. When Jiwoo gave the signal, all 20 teams attacked simultaneously. They hit fuel depots in 12 different systems. They destroyed repair stations in 8 sectors. They sabotaged logistics hubs across the entire Vexari supply network. Within 3 hours, the infrastructure supporting the massive armada simply ceased to exist. Back at the Karathi homeworld, Vokrath ordered his fleet to begin the attack. But reports started coming in immediately. Ships were running low on fuel. The nearest refueling station had been destroyed. Ammunition reserves were critical. The logistics bases were gone. Damaged vessels could not be repaired. The repair facilities had been sabotaged. Vokrath stared at the reports in disbelief. How did this happen? We control this entire region. How did human ships get behind our lines? His officers had no answers. The humans had somehow infiltrated deep into Vexari territory, identified critical targets, and destroyed them all at once. The Great Armada was now trapped deep in enemy space with no fuel, no ammunition, and no supplies. Captain Myungdae watched from his command deck as the situation unfolded exactly as Admiral Jiwoo had predicted. The Vexari were powerful, but they had never learned to protect their support systems. They focused everything on their combat fleet and assumed their supply chain was safe because they controlled the territory. That assumption had been their downfall. A fleet without fuel was just expensive metal floating in space. A fleet without ammunition could not fight. A fleet without repairs would slowly fall apart. The Vexari had brought 5,000 ships to crush their enemies, but those ships were now useless. Over the next week, the situation grew worse for the Vexari. Ships began running out of fuel and had to shut down their engines. Crew members started rationing food as supplies ran low. Damaged vessels could not be fixed, so their problems got worse. Morale collapsed as the soldiers realized they were trapped. Grand Marshal Vokrath tried to organize a retreat, but it was too late. Most of his ships did not have enough fuel to reach friendly territory. Those that could move were vulnerable to attack because they had no ammunition to defend themselves. The Great Armada had become a liability instead of an asset. Diplomat Kelrath watched everything from the Karathi homeworld with amazement. The humans had done it again. They had taken an impossible situation and turned it into a victory through pure strategic thinking. The massive Vexari fleet was defeated without even firing most of its weapons. Admiral Jiwoo gave the order. It is time. All forces coordinate with the Karathi fleet. We launch our counteroffensive now. The combined human and Karathi fleet attacked the stranded Vexari armada. It was not even a fair fight. The Vexari ships could barely maneuver. They had no ammunition for sustained combat. Their shields were failing because of power shortages. One by one, Vexari ships surrendered or were destroyed. Captain Myungdae led his squadron in the assault on Vokrath's flagship. The massive ship tried to fight back, but it was running on emergency power. Its weapon systems were offline. Its shields were at minimal strength. Myungdae felt no satisfaction in attacking such a helpless target, but he had a job to do. The Perseverance and 5 other human ships concentrated their fire on the flagship's command section. The weapon struck home with precision. Explosions rippled across the hull. Grand Marshal Vokrath, the undefeated commander who had conquered dozens of worlds, died when his ship exploded. With their leader dead and their fleet in shambles, the remaining Vexari forces surrendered. Ships broadcast their surrender on all frequencies. Soldiers abandoned their posts. The great invasion was over. Across the Karathi homeworld, people poured into the streets in celebration. They had survived. Against all odds, they had defeated the Vexari invasion. And they knew exactly who to thank. In every city, humans were welcomed as heroes. Children waved flags showing both Karathi and human symbols together. President Haywan addressed Earth and its colonies from her office. Today, humanity proved that we keep our promises. We honored our debt to the Karathi Empire. Many of our people gave their lives in this fight. We will never forget their sacrifice. And we will never forget that standing by your friends, no matter the cost, is what makes us truly human. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Tae Yang received hundreds of messages from species representatives. Some congratulated humanity on their victory. Others apologized for doubting humans. Many asked if humanity would be interested in new trade agreements or defensive alliances. Everyone wanted to be friends with humanity now. Tai Yang responded politely to all of them, but he knew the truth. These species had not changed. They were just afraid now. They had seen what humanity could do to an enemy. They wanted to make sure humans remained friends, not because they valued friendship, but because they feared making humanity an enemy. Only diplomat Kelrath's message was different. He wrote simply, "Thank you. You saved us when no one else would. The Karathi people will remember this forever. We stand with humanity now and always." Taeyang smiled as he read those words. That was what real friendship looked like. Not treaties signed for political advantage. Not alliances formed from fear. Just one civilization helping another because it was the right thing to do. The war was won. The Vexari were defeated. The Karathi were saved. And humanity had proven something important to the entire galaxy. Size did not determine strength. Numbers did not guarantee victory. What mattered was determination, strategy, and the willingness to stand by your friends when it mattered most. The galaxy would remember this war. And they would remember one simple truth. Mankind never forgets a debt, and their revenge can topple empires. 3 months after the destruction of Grand Marshal Vokrath's armada, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The Vexari Dominion had formally requested peace negotiations. Their military was shattered. Their economy was collapsing. Their government was in chaos. They had no choice but to surrender. Ambassador Taeyang walked into the council chamber alongside diplomat Kelrath. The atmosphere was completely different from the last time they had been here together. 3 months ago, the council had laughed when humanity promised to help the Karathi. Today, nobody was laughing. Representatives stood as Taeyang and Kelrath entered. Some actually bowed their heads in respect. The council chair called the session to order. Today we gathered to negotiate the terms of peace between the Vexari Dominion and the Karathi Empire, with humanity serving as the Karathi's ally and representative. The Vexari delegation has arrived and will present their proposals. The Vexari delegates entered the chamber. They looked nothing like the proud conquerors who had started this war. Their leader, Interim Commander Bextal, moved slowly to the center platform. His people had lost everything. Their military reputation was destroyed. Their economy was in ruins. Billions of Vexari citizens were demanding answers about how such a powerful empire had been defeated by such a small enemy. Bextal began speaking. The Vexari Dominion acknowledges its defeat. We accept responsibility for our illegal invasion of Karathi territory. We are prepared to offer reparations and withdraw from all occupied systems. In exchange, we ask for assurances that there will be no invasion of Vexari space and no war crimes trials for our military leadership. Several council representatives nodded. It seemed like a reasonable proposal. The Vexari would pay some compensation, withdraw their forces, and everyone could move on. Wars ended like this all the time in galactic politics. Make a deal, sign some documents, and forget about it within a few years. But Taeyang stood up. The council chair looked surprised. Ambassador Taeyang, do you wish to respond to the Vexari proposal? Yes, Humanity and the Karathi Empire reject these terms completely. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Vexari delegates looked shocked. Bextal stammered, "But these are standard peace terms. This is how conflicts are resolved in the galaxy." Tai Yang walked to the center platform. His voice was calm but firm. The Vexari Dominion invaded Karathi space without provocation. They destroyed civilian centers. They killed millions of innocent people. They did this because they thought they could get away with it. They thought the galaxy would look the other way. They were almost right. He looked directly at Bextal. "You offer to withdraw from occupied territory. That is not generous. That is simply returning what you stole. You offer reparations. That is the bare minimum required. You ask for no war crimes trials. That is asking us to forget your crimes." The council chamber was completely silent. Every representative was watching the human ambassador. Humanity has 3 demands. First, the Vexari will withdraw immediately from all occupied Karathi systems and return all seized property and resources. Second, the Vexari will pay full reparations to rebuild everything they destroyed, not token payments, full compensation. Third, the Vexari government will publicly acknowledge its crimes, apologize to the Karathi people, and implement reforms to prevent future military aggression. Bextal looked horrified. These terms are impossible. They would bankrupt our empire. They would humiliate our government. We cannot accept this. Taeyang's expression did not change. "Then you can continue the war. Our fleet is ready. The Karathi fleet is ready. We will push into Vexari space and continue fighting until you have nothing left. The choice is yours." Bextal understood the situation. The Vexari military was destroyed. They could not continue fighting. They had no choice but to accept whatever terms humanity demanded. He looked at his fellow delegates, who all nodded slowly. "We accept your terms." The treaty was drafted over the next 3 days. Every detail was negotiated carefully. The Karathi would receive full compensation for their losses. The Vexari would withdraw all forces immediately. The Vexari government would publicly apologize and reform its military policies. It was not a treaty between equals. It was a surrender. When the treaty was finally signed, diplomat Kelrath approached Ambassador Tae Yang in the quiet corridor outside the council chamber. The Karathi placed his hand on Tae Yang's shoulder, a gesture of deep respect in Karathi culture. "I must ask you something. Why did humanity risk so much for us? You had nothing to gain. Your people died in this war. Your economy suffered. You could have simply ignored our situation like everyone else. Why did you help us?" Taeyang smiled. 50 years ago, my people were dying. Earth was collapsing. We sent messages begging for help and almost everyone ignored us. But your people came. You saved us. You asked for nothing in return. You simply helped because you believed we deserved to survive." He paused, looking at Kelrath directly. "You taught us something important that day. You taught us that true civilization is not measured by military power or economic strength. It is measured by how you treat others when they need help." The Karathi showed humanity what it means to be truly civilized. We could not let that lesson be forgotten. Kelrath's eyes became wet with emotion. "Thank you. The Karathi people will never forget what humanity did for us. We are allies now and forever." In the weeks that followed, humanity and the Karathi formalized their alliance. Trade agreements were signed. Military cooperation was established. Cultural exchanges began. It was not an alliance built on fear or political advantage. It was built on trust, respect, and shared values. Other species took notice. The Thelonians, who had refused to help the Karathi during the invasion, now requested a meeting with Ambassador Taeyang. They wanted to establish better relations with humanity. The Prasari, who had laughed at humanity's promise, now offered favorable trade terms. The Zendari suddenly discovered they had common interests with humans. Taeyang met with all of them politely. He negotiated fair agreements and established diplomatic channels, but he never forgot which species had stood with humanity and which had looked away when their help was needed. Trust, once broken, was not easily restored. Back on Earth, President. He once stood before a memorial wall in the capital city. On that wall were the names of every human who had died during the war. 237 names. 237 people who had given their lives to honor a debt. She placed her hand on the wall and spoke quietly. You kept our promise. You showed the galaxy who we are. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. Later that day, she addressed all of humanity in a broadcast that reached every colony and every ship. The war is over. We have honored our debt to the Karathi Empire. Many of our people gave their lives in this fight. We mourn them. We honor them. And we remember the lesson they died to protect. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Humanity is not the largest species in the galaxy. We do not have the biggest military. We do not control the most territory. But we have something more important. We have integrity. We keep our promises. We stand by our friends. And we never forget those who helped us when we needed it most. Across human space, people watched her speech with pride. They had proven something important. They had shown that humanity's word meant something. When humans made a promise, they kept it, no matter the cost. On the Karathi homeworld, children learned about the war in their schools. They studied how humanity had come to their rescue when no one else would. They learned about Captain Mayungde, Admiral Jiwoo, Pilot Sangmi, and all the humans who had fought for them. Future generations of Karathi would grow up knowing that humanity had stood by them in their darkest hour. In the Vexari Dominion, the defeat led to major political changes. The government that had started the war was removed from power. New leaders promised to reform their society and focus on peaceful development instead of military conquest. They had learned a painful lesson about underestimating smaller opponents. Throughout the galaxy, the phrase became well known. Mankind never forgets a debt, and their revenge can topple empires. Species ambassadors repeated it in council meetings. Military strategists studied the war in their academies. Parents told their children about the humans who had refused to abandon their friends. But there was another phrase that spread among the Karathi and their allies. It was simpler and perhaps more important. Humanity's loyalty can save civilizations. That was what mattered most. Not the military victories, not the strategic brilliance, but the simple fact that humanity had kept its promise when keeping that promise seemed impossible. Years later, Ambassador Tai Yang retired from his position at the Galactic Council. On his last day, he received personal messages from hundreds of species representatives. They thanked him for his service and wished him well, but the message he treasured most came from diplomat Kelrath. It was brief. Thank you, my friend. You showed the galaxy what true honor looks like. The Karathi will never forget. Taeyang smiled as he read those words. He had done his job. He had kept humanity's promise, and in doing so, he had helped create something rare in galactic politics. A genuine friendship between two species, not an alliance of convenience, not a treaty based on mutual advantage, but real friendship built on trust and shared sacrifice. The Galactic Council chamber floated in neutral space, a massive structure where hundreds of alien species gathered to discuss the fate of civilizations. Inside the main hall, representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated seats. Some had multiple arms, others had scales or fur, and a few existed only as clouds of energy contained in special suits. Among them sat Ambassador Tae Yang, the human representative. Tae Yang was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. He had served as Earth's ambassador for 15 years, attending countless meetings where humanity was often ignored or dismissed. Today felt like any other routine session. Representatives discussed trade agreements, border disputes, and resource allocation. Tae Yang listened quietly, taking notes on his data pad. Then everything changed. The massive display screens around the chamber lit up with urgent news. The Karathi Empire was under attack. The Vexari Dominion had launched a full-scale invasion across multiple star systems. Images showed burning cities, destroyed fleets, and millions of refugees fleeing their homes. The Karathi were dying. Tae Yang felt his chest tighten. The Karathi. 50 years ago, they had saved humanity from extinction. He remembered those dark days clearly, even though he had been just a boy. A massive solar flare had struck Earth without warning, Power grids across the planet had exploded. Hospitals went dark. Food production stopped. Billions faced starvation and death. Earth had sent desperate messages into space, begging for help from anyone who would listen. Most species had ignored those messages. Some had sent polite refusals, explaining they had their own problems. A few had offered thoughts and prayers, but nothing more. Only the Karathi had responded with action. Their ships had arrived within weeks, carrying advanced technology, medical supplies, and massive amounts of food. They had worked alongside humans to rebuild the power infrastructure. They had asked for nothing in return. When human leaders had asked why the Karathi were helping, their response had been simple. All civilized species deserve a chance to survive. That was all. No strings attached. No demands for payment or loyalty. They had simply helped because it was the right thing to do. Now those same Karathi needed help, and the Galactic Council was debating what to do. Diplomat Kelrath, the Karathi representative, stood at the center platform. His species looked similar to humans but with blue skin and 3 fingers on each hand. He spoke with a calm voice despite the terror his people were facing. The Vexari Dominion has invaded our territory without provocation. They have destroyed civilian centers and killed millions of innocent people. We ask the Council to authorize a peacekeeping intervention to stop this aggression. The Council began to debate. One by one, species representatives stood to explain why they could not help. The Thelonians cited economic concerns. Their markets would suffer if they diverted military resources. The Prasari mentioned their treaty obligations prevented military action outside their borders. The Zendari simply stated they had no interest in becoming involved in someone else's war. Tai Yang watched in disbelief as species after species voted against helping the Karathi. These were the same civilizations that preached about galactic unity and cooperation. These were the same leaders who had treaties promising mutual defense. Yet when the moment came to actually help, they all found excuses. Kelrath stood in silence as the votes came in. His expression showed no surprise, only deep sadness. He had expected this. The galaxy talked about justice and honor, but when action was required, everyone looked away. The final count was displayed on the screens. 237 species voted against intervention. Only 12 voted in favor. The motion failed. The council chair, a massive creature with tentacles instead of limbs, declared the session closed. Representatives began gathering their belongings and preparing to leave. Most would return to their comfortable homes and forget about the Karathi by tomorrow. It would become just another tragedy in a galaxy full of them. Tai Yang stood up. His hands were shaking, not from fear but from anger. He activated his communication device, requesting permission to speak. The council chair looked annoyed but granted the request. Humans rarely spoke during sessions, so this caught everyone's attention. Tai Yang walked to the center platform. He looked at Kelrath, who seemed confused by the humans' actions. Then Tai Yang addressed the entire council. His voice was steady and clear. 50 years ago, my people faced extinction. Our planet was dying. We sent messages across the stars begging for help. Almost everyone ignored us. But the Karathi came. They brought supplies, technology, and hope. They asked for nothing. They simply helped because they believed we deserved to survive. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was watching the human ambassador. Today, this council has voted to abandon the Karathi in their time of need. You have all found your reasons and excuses. That is your choice to make. But humanity will not forget what the Karathi did for us. We will not abandon them. I hereby announce that the human government will provide full military support to defend the Karathi Empire against the Vexari Dominion. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then laughter began to spread through the chamber. It started as small chuckles but grew into loud, mocking laughter. Humanity was one of the smallest military powers in the galaxy. Their entire fleet consisted of maybe 40 combat vessels. The Vexari Dominion commanded thousands of warships and had conquered dozens of star systems. What could humanity possibly do? The Prasari representative laughed the loudest. The humans are going to stop the Vexari? With what, harsh language? This is amusing. Tai Yang did not respond to the mockery. He simply looked at Kelrath, who stared back with an expression of shock and something else. Hope. The human ambassador gave a small nod, then turned and walked out of the chamber. His message had been delivered. Outside the council chamber, Tai Yang contacted Earth immediately. He connected directly to President HFY, who appeared on his communication device. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for making difficult decisions. "I announced our commitment to defend the Karathi," Taiyang said. "The council laughed at us. They think we are too small to make a difference." President HFY smiled. "Let them laugh. We will show them what humanity is capable of. I am calling an emergency session of the government now. We will mobilize everything we have." Taiyang felt relief wash over him. He had worried that his announcement might have been too bold, that he had promised something humanity could not deliver. But seeing the determination in the president's eyes, he knew his people would keep their word. Back inside the council chamber, the representatives continued laughing and joking about the humans' foolish promise. But Kelrath was not laughing. He sat alone in his seat, thinking about what he had just witnessed. The humans were going to help. They were actually going to help. It seemed impossible, yet he believed them. In the Vexari command ship orbiting a conquered Karathi colony, Supreme Commander Rethok received reports about the human declaration. He read the message and snorted in disgust. Humans, the pathetic species that nearly died 50 years ago. They think they can challenge us? Let them come. We will crush them along with the Karathi. He dismissed the report and returned to planning his next attack. The humans were not worth his attention. They would be dealt with easily when the time came. But Supreme Commander Rethok had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated humanity. He did not understand that humans never forgot those who helped them. He did not know that humans had spent 50 years preparing for the next crisis, and he certainly did not realize that humanity's greatest strength was not their military power, but their absolute determination to keep their promises no matter the cost. The debt would be repaid. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened someone humanity considered a friend.